And of course, we have our cultural grounding and welcoming. So I will start with a land acknowledgement. We start with a land acknowledgement. In starting with a land acknowledgement, we are leaning into a custom that spans many cultures and has endured for many, many generations. And that is by acknowledging the land, we are acknowledging our interconnection. And so we are reminding ourselves at the beginning of the meeting why the biggest context in which this meeting occurs. And the land that we are part of was here long before we entered it, will continue long after we are gone. And everything that we know and experience and need to survive and thrive comes from the land and returns to the land. And this is an ongoing process of reciprocity. With every breath in, we bring in oxygen that has been exhaled by our green relatives. And each of our exhales contributes carbon dioxide that is nourishment and nutrition to them. So by acknowledging the land, we are really just acknowledging that we are part of something much, much larger than us. And luckily much smarter and much more resilient. And so we can relax into the fact that we are part of the land. And in doing so, we also acknowledge the deep gratitude that we owe to all of the wisdom keepers from all the different indigenous traditions who have kept this knowledge alive, often at great cost to themselves and their own culture, their own people, and who are still generously sharing this with us Western settler folks at a time when we really desperately need it. So we owe a deep debt of gratitude that we can express in a material way by doing what we can to heal any harms that may have happened. And knowing that we're all in this together and that I am my relations. So may this be an inspiration to each of us to do what we can, where we can, when we can, to heal any harms and to right any wrongs. And a reminder that when we care for the land cares for us. So in particular, I will acknowledge that I'm coming from Wasanic territory, and a territory that has been stewarded by my still current existing neighbors and their kin for thousands of years. And yeah, may I learn to be as good a steward as they have been over the generations. And let's start with just a little bit of grounding. I know I need it, so I'm going to share it all with you. I invite you to take a moment where you are just to remind yourself of being a body in a landscape. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable. And just take a moment to feel the weight of your body pressing down on the seat. Feel the gentle tug of gravity. Not too tough and not too light. Keeps us from floating into space and still lets us move around. And you may also notice your breath, the body expanding with the in-breath, and then relaxing with the out-breath. A constant material reminder of reciprocity, connection, fresh energy coming in and letting go of anything that no longer serves you on the way out. So I invite you to take a few more breaths in and out, drawing in that fresh energy and letting go of what no longer serves you. And then in your own time, when you're ready, just take one deep breath in, drawing in the energy from all your connections and all your relations. And on the exhale, just let go to the extent possible of anything that keeps you from being present with us today. And then when you're ready, come join us back in the circle. All right. Does anyone have a good check-in question?
How have you been of service to the land today?
Some. All right. And today's circle, as I see it, is Ronnie, April, Becca, Anne, Roland, Heather, Pam, and me. So our check-in question, how have you been of service to the land today? Over to you, Ronnie.
I have 3 houseplants that were gifted to me when I moved into my dorm, and they all were in pots that were too small. So this morning I took them outside and I potted them in larger pots with fresh soil and let them hang outside to breathe for a while, and then brought them back in. So I feel happier because my plants are happier. And I will pass to April.
I will have service to the land by taking some buckets of water out to some of my trees who are thirsty. And I just took a moment after I put the water somewhere near their roots to just think about what that meant and to wonder about how far the roots went. And I'm not sure who's next to me.
Becca is next.
I did water my houseplants and the herbs on my balcony and flowers today. And I also walked to my haircut instead of driving or riding my electric assisted bicycle. And admired flowers along the way. And
Over to Anne.
I watered my plants outside too. And I've been collecting my kitchen water, my cleanish kitchen water and watering them. And like the soil is getting wet enough to start absorbing the water versus just like running off. So that feels good.
Over to Roland.
I just put my hands in the dirt and I'm trying to remember what my morning circle thing was. Something about the things that I do for myself are gifts that I can share. And so putting my hands in the dirt was a gift to myself, and I shared it, and I'm continuing to share it. So I pass to Heather.
Oh, you're muted, Heather. Hey, Steph.
Yeah, I said, this is a challenge. I haven't been outside today. I've had back-to-back meetings. But before I did my meeting, I just jarred up the roasted tomatoes that I had scrounged from all over the ground that were ripened and over-ripened and sorted them through. So I don't think that I've given a gift to the land, but the land has certainly given a gift to me. I'm looking at, maybe you can see this. It's kind of like, I don't know. Can you see this?
Oh, wow.
That's that, and then here too.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, you muted.
You're muted again.
I just waved it, I guess. Yeah, the land has been very generous to me, so I may owe something. I'll think about what I can give back. Now, Pam, over to you.
Well, I think I'm going to just one thing. Harvesting the food that is produced by all these plants that are husbanded sounds to me like a really strong way of honoring the land and what it gives. It has been a busy day, and so I think in some ways it was a kind of a being at the design school closing session was in a way a kind of honoring of the land, in hearing other people's stories of what they had harvested, etc., and being pretty inspired by the energy that human beings are bringing into this thing. It's not just all such a bad news story, it just is the news is predicated on what sells. And the good news stories don't sell. And then I think I'm going to, for the time being, consider noticing what is as a kind of gift. So I was noticing the smoke and the strain that the trees in this area have really been under, and how they have had to weather a really this harsh drought that we're in. And I think that's a gift to the land to notice what it has to contend with, and why it is that it has to contend with this, which is the kind of activity from one kind of being, of a human being on the planet. So that's enough. Who's next?
I'm going to slide Steph in there. So we're just doing, it's just a check-in. And the question is, how have you been of service to the land today? Whatever that means to you.
Well, I don't know, because I was working. I gave away a drum kit. Maybe in some way that celebrates something innate about just being alive and existing in the space. I had opportunities to do more place-based education, but it was so smoky here that didn't take them today. Yeah.
So then that's over to me, I guess. And I think that's actually a good reminder. I was thinking about, I'm in the same boat. I've been kind of in meetings all day, though I think my meetings are often in service to the land. So I think that's my understanding, is the land is not separate from the people, and care for the people is also care for the land. So everything that we do for each other, we're also doing for the land. And I think, actually riffing a little bit on what Roland was saying, I think taking the time this morning for the circle, and I don't know how other people experience the whole back to school time, but I find it really provoking. It's like this juxtaposition of energy, where it's like you go from the slow of the summer and then wham, it's like right back into it. So taking the time this morning to kind of process that, and not just react to it, I think that was ultimately in service to the land and service to myself as well. So this is really exciting. We've got a full house, and we're having a little bit of a hybrid meeting. Speaking of this time of year, we did a little bit of a lull over the summer just to give people some space. And now we're gearing up for a lot of things to happen. So our coordination circle today has sort of two parts to it. One is a really quick sort of seasonal review, which is really about what have we accomplished recently? Where are we now? What do we have sort of under our belt? And we have some really big accomplishments this summer. And then the big question is what comes next? And so really I'm assuming that's going to focus mostly on outreach work that we are preparing to do now that we have bylaws. And I've started to use the phrase, we're investor ready. And so now that we're investor ready, what are we going to do with all of that? And the way we normally, for those of you who are new to the coordination circle, the first thing that we do is a check-in on our North Star. And we do that by going around, usually twice around the circle. And the first question, the first round is answering the question, what are we trying to accomplish together and why is that important to you? And then we all have a chance to share, and then we go once again around so that you can respond to what you're hearing and noticing in each other. And because we have kind of a full house today, I am going to ask the people, brevity is the heart of wit. So if you can try to keep things a little brief today and know that we'll layer up as we go around. So I'm also going to share my screen with our Asana agenda, and I'll be taking notes on what people are saying so you can kind of see a record as we are building up our North Star check-in. So Ronnie, over to you. What is your take on what we're doing together and why is that important?
Going first is always hard. Okay, got that out of the way. We are creating a place where people can come to experience what comes next in a supported, hands-on, and holistic way. And it's important because providing that kind of experience allows people to not only imagine, but actually feel and sense what it's like to be in regenerative community, as well as providing them with tools that they can take home and use in other places. I think that made sense, and I will pass to April.
I'm grateful you went first, Ronnie, because A for April sometimes gets elevated to being first, a reluctant first. I believe that we are learning together to be collective / regenerative / reparative. And to learn to use all of what we bring as human beings, that skills, character, possibility, our audacity to try something different. And it's important because somewhere it needs to be modeled how to do not business as usual. I think that sums it up for me. Over to Rebecca.
Thanks, April. I think we're creating an island of sanity, a la Meg Wheatley, and one that hopefully contains some of the best gleanings of the various cultures that are feeding into it in a way that can be carried forward and sustained in the future. And that's important because hope. And Anne, I think, is next.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I'll say we are experimenting and co-creating like ways of living that honors all of life. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. And it's important, I'm gonna say it's important because life is wonderful.
Hmm.
Life is magical and we get to be part of it. I'll go with that. Over to Roland.
We are being responsible in towards the poly crisis, as in we have the ability to respond in whichever way we can. And our response is by living life as an experiment. So grounding ideas on how we can live better through our own experience. And it's important because some people may say that we are already at the nth hour, but for whatever space we have as things shift and change in whichever direction it's going to change, if we have the opportunity to experiment ideas on how we could live better together before we really have to, then that would be a kindness to us all and would be a way to reduce suffering. And after me is Heather. Over to Heather.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'm not part of the coordinating committee. I'm part of the finance committee. And yeah, for me, it's about securing the land.
Mm.
And that's important because, as Ben says, we come from the land, we go back to the land, we are on the land, and we reference the land. And for me, we're creating the commons where the land is no longer owned, where we belong to the land, it doesn't belong to us. So to Pam.
All of the above. And I'll add, this is a place where we get to meet the others and to unlearn and learn together with the ground underneath our feet. And it's important because this is the there is the end of that one story. This is the beginning, the gestation, and the incubation of the next story. And I trust that in good faith, this story of being aligned with life will prevail as long as we put our energy, love, thought, heart into it. And Steph.
Okay, I feel like we're creating a framework through which people can feel safe to join community, to come into a relationship with and get to know nature and place and themselves and each other through experiential learning. And that's important to me because I believe that we are equal with place and nature and the other entities that thrive there. And I want to do what I can to bring my reality in alignment with my heart.
Mm.
Oh, going first might be hard, but going last is also hard because there's nothing left to say. Yes. I'm just buzzing from everyone else's things right now. So, and this, I think what we are doing is what we are doing right here, which is creating the space for people to share, to be vulnerable and to share what feels real in a way where we get the me too, which is, for me, it's, I think, one of the most magical things of that feeling of connection. Yeah, and it's important because I think what Pam was saying, that, it seems like there's a lot of bad news out there, and there's a lot of challenges, but there's incredible capacity when we align. Yeah. So we've all had a chance to share once, and now basically we get to do a kind of reflection round. So if anything's good here, what did you notice? What stands out for you? What does it bring up? So just a chance to respond to what you're hearing from everyone else. Ronnie, over to you.
I'm feeling really moved, and to have so many people here feels relieving to my heart. Having to be in a lot of spaces and choosing to be in a lot of spaces where people are pretty much doing business as usual with some, some advancements here and there. I told someone the other day that I'm equal parts idealist and pragmatist. And so being involved in a project like this is really important for my soul, both the vision of it and the carrying it out. So I feel that, all of that here in this space tonight. So thank you. Over to you, April.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm struck by, I'm touched as well, but I'm struck by the alignment of what each of us has said with each other. And it feels like it's real. I mean, we're not faffing around here. This is real, and it is grounded. And over to Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm similarly, and I came in feeling super tired, and I'm already feeling slightly less tired, so that's a good sign. Although I don't know how long it'll last. I didn't sleep too well last night, and I got a COVID booster yesterday, so dragging a little bit. Happy to be back here with all of you. Over to Anne.
I'm also feeling very moved and grateful, and I want to say how welcomed I feel in this group. Like, this is so authentically inclusive, not with like names and calling it this and that. Like, it, for me to show up having not been at one of these circles in ever, maybe the coordination one, I don't think, and actually feel confident enough to just share what was alive for me, that says so much about what is being created here. And it's very special, and I feel very welcomed. So thank you to everyone who has been working so hard to create this very real thing that also is like intangible, but it's so real. Yeah, over to Roland.
And what Ben said. Over to Heather.
And for me, it's what everybody has said. It's the first time around, and I come in the middle, closer to the end. I just said, "What do I have to add?" It's kind of there's such a very strong alignment, and having been in a number and am in a number of processes that are very small, what I'm really encouraged by is the number of really strong people when you get them all together in one circle that really we really know what we want to do. It's great. Pam.
Yes. There's something here. It's precious and it's strong and palpable. This is no small thing. Steph?
Close to the end. I don't know what to say. I was struck by how different all of our answers were. And then because of that, how different the question might be for each of us, and how that's like the essence of collaboration. And I thought it was cool. That's it.
Desperately trying to get notes, so that we'll fix that on the recording. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add. Feeling really grateful and supported and yeah, and energized. So thank you all for being here, and now to satisfy Ronnie and my own need for practicality, let's get some work done. So we've had a chance to revisit our North Star, and well, actually, and let me stick with protocol. So the two things that we have currently on the agenda are a little bit of a seasonal review, just kind of checking in on where we are in terms of progress, and then really starting to tackle the outreach plan and how we're going to move forward with that. Does anyone else have any items that you would like to add to the agenda? And popcorn style is fine. I can't see everybody, so if you can just like say it out loud, but I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. So, all right, I think we can dive right into it. All right, so the seasonal review, our part of our strategy is the aim, act, reflect, repeat as necessary, and we do that in a fractal way. So we do it at our sprints, and we do it seasonally, and we do it every year. And we're always answering the same questions, which is, given what we've done, where are we now? Given where we are now, where do we want to go? And given that, what are the next steps? So the first step is updates on progress. And I'm going to start on this because I probably have a more direct knowledge of all of the pieces and parts. And but I'll do it quick, and then we'll go through the circle, and people can add anything, either any observations or any questions that you might have. Number one with the bullet from my perspective is we have penultimate bylaws. And by that, I mean we have a draft that we think is totally good to go. But we want to leave the door open because as people come in, as partners come in, if there are any revisions, we're open to those revisions. But after a lot of conversation and research and discussion, we have some really strong bylaws, and I've actually been lucky enough to talk through them with a number of different people, and so far people are really impressed by them. And in particular, there are some things baked into it that are unusual in other projects like this. And I think that one of the key factors in there is that we're trying to find a way of legally encoding the Indigenous obligation of care, so that ownership is not just about having the the title, but is actually about the responsibility of caring for it. And we've also have it set up in a way that it can be a choose your own adventure. So we can make it possible. We all have different assets. We have different strengths that we can bring to the project, and the bylaws offer an opportunity for people to kind of lean into their strengths and sort of choose your own adventure that way. So that has definitely felt like one of the biggest accomplishments from this summer. The other thing that we have successfully done, in all experiments are always somewhat successful and somewhat unsuccessful, but we've run our boot camps, our gumboot boot camps this summer, and the thing that has not worked has been getting a large cohort to arrive on the same day. But the thing that has worked has been giving people that direct experience of the land and non-ordinary reality. And we've gotten some amazing feedback from the people that have been here this summer in terms of, well, actually all the stuff that we were talking about in terms of creating an experience where people can slow down and quiet down a little bit and tend to the land in ways that feel healing, both to the land and to themselves. And we've gotten feedback in our circles and when people have been coming and going that has been really affirming in a really deep way. And also, I would say we've learned a lot of practical things. We've continued to advance how we bring people in, how we onboard people, how we orient them to what we're doing. We've learned a lot about visual cues, about having things written down and also having it really clear where to find things, how to find things, what's expected, all that kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of really good learning and refinements on that front. One of the other things that is that we've been doing, we continue to do, we've been doing this for a long time, but we continue to refine our messaging about what we're doing and why it's important. And this is, I think, real news to everyone, most everyone here, but I have started to play with AI recently, and which I did, Pam, on your instigation. So you're culpable in this one, and you and Rosa Zubi Zaretta both kind of encouraged me to explore Aiden Cinnamon Tea, who is Vanessa Andreotti's friend in AI. And I got into it just because I was sort of curious about the experiment, but I have found some really wonderful support in refining some of our messages, which we'll go over in some of the outreach plan stuff. That was the two documents that I shared in the email were both co-generated with AI in remarkable ways. So I think those are probably the ones that those are the starting points that I will give in terms of updates on where I think we are now. And then let's go around the circle and feel free to add anything and or ask any questions for refinements. Ronnie, over to you.
The only other thing that comes to mind is more of a sort of an internal collaborative shift, I would say. I guess it was around the middle of the summer or maybe the beginning. We simplified the 5 guilds into this combined or this coordination circle where we all kind of address things together. And that was due to needs and capacity issues and just a lot of work for not a lot of people. And from my perspective, I think that that was a compassionate decision to make for all of us, and kind of helped to wrap our heads around the work for the summer. So yeah, just an example of resilience and adapting to changing circumstances. And with that, I will pass to April.
I don't have a lot to add to this except a reflection that we're kind of keeping our eye on the ball and saying if the ball bounces, we'll follow it, but we'll be responsive and do something around that. I believe that this sort of strategic direction, if you want to call it that, of the summer has been absolutely right on in helping us to stay in the flow of this whole project and to do the critical things and the really important experiments that we kind of needed for the next step. So kudos for that. It's not easy to do any of those things, particularly not in summer, but that has happened. And I have to say that I never thought I would be delighted by bylaws, but I've been seduced into admiration for the process. And I'm happy to say I didn't have to do a darn thing in creating them, but I think there's been a super piece of work done there. Thank you. Over to Rebecca.
Lost my main Zoom window somehow. Yeah, I feel like I fell off the bandwagon for a month or so too. I don't know, when the schedule changed, I didn't get it into my calendar, and then I was away, and so I feel like and I've just been, for those people who might not know, have just been on the bylaws, legal, whatever guild, and so it's great to hear updates about other things, and I'm curious about whether the penultimate draft is still the last one, the same one I saw before, or whether it's been updated again. I know my husband Don had some comments, and I don't know if they've been incorporated yet or if they're just going to get folded in with all the other potential investor comments, but be nice to have an update on that. And I also somehow didn't see the email you sent yesterday until after you mentioned it, and I went looking for it. So I'm just feeling like catching up, but glad to be doing so.
I just want to jump in. So I'll give you two responses. One is Don pointed out some inconsistencies, which I think we've addressed. And then he had some that are sort of substantive, and I thought we would fold those into potential investor comments, sort of handle them all at once. And then the other thing is, Roland and I have talked about a side venture for the Pharmastery, is that we're going to start selling bottles of Absolution. So, for a little, we'll just have little bottles by the door. $10 buys you full Absolution. And there, I absolve you, Becca.
Although, wouldn't that be better coming from Roland, who was raised Catholic, than from you?
Yeah. I don't know. He feels iffy about it. I have no compulsion. So
One time an ordained.
No, I am not feeling iffy about it. I was actually suggesting that we could also add a smiting option. Ben, because we are now married, is Catholic by association, which is really a funny thing to say when
I'm recovering Catholic by association. All right, sorry, where were we in? Oh, I guess it's over to Anne.
I have not been. I'm more on the periphery of this and just observing and being part of it, but more from what can I do where I live? So my main contribution is that I have been networking, and I invited someone who's actually been watching all the YouTube videos of Lifeboat Academy and is interested. So hopefully he will come at the next meeting. And that's a really big deal for me to have experienced this being with all of you enough to be able to start telling people about it. So that's what I have to say about that. Over to Roland.
I think that was thorough. I have nothing to add at this point. And there will probably be things that pop up as the meeting continues anyway. So over to Heather.
Well, I've been through the tedious process of the Constitution, and I think a number of meetings ago, I declared it good enough for now. And I'm still holding to that. And it will change as we see that change is necessary, but we've done the work on this and it feels really, really fantastic. The other thing that I will bring that I know, except for Ben and maybe Roland, you don't know about is that Lifeboat is a member of Foodlands Cooperative. And Foodlands and Lifeboat have really formed a really reciprocal relationship. We in Foodlands really benefit from Lifeboat's experience. And we're just in the process of interviewing other like-minded community farms. Amazing amount of alliances with these farms, these other farms. And so Ben and I just came off the meeting, the coordination circle meeting, which I sometimes kind of get a little bit mixed up. What coordination are we talking about now? But yeah, and it's just it's all such good work. So thanks to Lifeboat for your participation. And it's over to Pam.
Well, a lot of gratitude to those of you who've put so much energy into the foundational work, the documents and so on. It's certainly over my head, and but I appreciate how important that kind of groundwork is. I just want to say I think it was a brilliant idea experimenting with the boot camps. Initially, I found it terrifying to try to consider how I would be able to relate to it, but I just loved the idea, didn't know how to broadcast out. And I was delighted to find out that there was, as you guys are very flexible, and it's again not one size fits all. So to be able to find it, there was a space for me to be able to show up as just as myself to just see and feel the energy and the entity and meet you guys in person was a real thrill, and it just made a lot of difference in my feeling a different level of confidence, not necessarily in knowing exactly how to communicate out, but definitely in terms of my desire for this to be known to other people as a possibility. Choose whatever may happen. So that was a lot of work for you guys in the summer, not much of a holiday, and just very grateful for everything that you've made possible. And that's Steph.
I think other than what everyone said, and especially you, Pam, I'm grateful for the time that went into this. This kind of paperwork repulses me, like at a visceral, like it's disgusting. And I can't imagine, even with the big Y, and I can't imagine what you had to do to motivate yourself. And thank you for that. Like, I know what it's for, and so I value it. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. I feel like I should get an honorary law degree from having to, put together bylaws. All right, this is great. And I think this is definitely enough of a kind of a grounding on where we are that we can dive into the outreach plan. And I think what I would like to do is so let's see, I think I need to stop the screen share here and share from here. So I shared a document. That document was co-created with Aidan. And actually, I think I think I want to start with the story seeds. Yeah, I think I want to start with the story seeds, and I will actually share the link in the chat if people want to look at it directly. So one of the things that we have identified is that we have different audiences that we're talking to, that we're bringing together in this project. And one of the challenges has always been, what we're doing is unusual, it's out of the mainstream, it's not business as usual, all those sorts of things. And how do we communicate it to people in a way that's effective? And especially now, I feel like we have a lot of the core material, and then it's tailoring it to each of the different audiences that we're trying to talk to. So in working with Aiden, the AI, we came up with these story seeds. And the idea with the story seeds is they're not like necessarily the narrative, but they're kind of the essence of what we're trying to communicate and who we're trying to communicate to. So it's really about trying to get into the feel of what this is all about. So we've got two seeds for each of our 4 groups. So for retreat guests, one of the seeds is imagine this. You arrive, tuck your phone away in a drawer, and step outside. The air smells different, time slows. By dusk, you're sitting with a handful of strangers who already feel like kin, watching the first stars appear. You're not here to consume an experience. You're here to remember what life feels like when you stop performing. And the other one guest told us, I came with a mind that wouldn't stop racing. I left with my nervous system in rhythm with the crickets. That's the gift of this place. It's not just about a retreat. It's a rehearsal for being, for a different way of being. And then we elaborated for each of those on, so if that's kind of the hook, what are the practical questions that people are going to have following up on it? So then we have a list of sort of, the details, accommodations, food, how does it work? What's the cost? Those sorts of things. And then for the timeshare croppers, we've got, and again, the idea with the timeshare croppers is it's people who have a long-term but not full-time commitment to the land. So picture this, your hands in the soil, the smell of the earth rising. You plant beans, weed rows, share laughter with others beside you. At harvest, you take some of the food home and some goes into the common pot. This isn't labor for rent, it's belonging. It's remembering that tending the land is how we tend each other. And one sharecropper said, I came back the next season because I was excited to see the garden beds I built last year already brimming with fresh young shoots. This isn't a gig, it's kinship. Each time you return, the soil greets you like family. And again, with some practical questions, how does the arrangement work? How much commitment? Can you share your timeshares? Those sorts of things. How do I stay in touch when I'm not there? And then for the caretakers, the people that we're hoping would join sort of on a more permanent basis, every community needs its steady lights. As a caretaker, you're that light. You tend water systems, gardens, kitchens, but you also tend spirit. When guests arrive, they step into a place that feels held. That's your gift. You're not just maintaining buildings, you're keeping the flame alive. And one caretaker told us, I realized the land knew my footsteps. Every path I walked became part of the place's memory. That's the essence of caretaking here. Your daily presence becomes a kind of living archive. And then some questions that they might have about what does the day look like? Is it paid or volunteer? What are the commitments, what training, and what are the supports? And then for the benefactors, for our potential investors, money is like manure, left in piles it stinks, spread on fertile ground it grows life. At the Farmistery, your gift doesn't buy outcomes, it becomes soil. It nourishes the place where people remember how to breathe, how to share, and how to hope. And here's how it works. A guest arrives exhausted, carrying the weight of modernity. They leave lighter, stronger, able to contribute back to their community. They may never know your name, but your gift is in the lungs, in their footsteps, in their voice when they return home. So investing here feels like putting my resources into living soil instead of abstract markets. And then some specific questions for them. what are the legal structures? What kind of returns can I expect? How's my money protected? And how do I stay connected? And can I visit? So, so those are the, I think, kind of the everything else in terms of the outreach sort of builds off of some of that core messaging. And at this point, I'm thinking let's pause and I think just popcorn style. Actually, are people good with popcorn, or did we want to do a whole circle just to respond?
Popcorn's good.
Popcorn. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop the screen share so that I can see people. So who has anything they want to share? Questions, comments, reactions?
I'll start. Oh,
Okay.
Becca, you can start.
These are fabulous.
Mhm.
Every single one of them brought tears to my eyes. And I am an AI skeptic still for the most part, so
Me too.
I wasn't exactly primed to love them, but it really brings it to life and to heart.
That's beautiful, I think. Absolutely. And targeted too.
Yeah.
You know, to the people who will want a different experience from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Roland?
I saw it as when the ink was still wet, and I only saw the uh, little texts, not the FAQs. And
Mhm.
the FAQs are interesting, and except for the caretaker FAQs, I feel it's not describing me. The FAQs feel more like they are for the timeshare croppers. Um, but when I read the little texts, the little what do you call them anyway? The little
So
stories,
quotes. Yeah.
the quotes. My first reaction was the same as Becca's. I was like, holy crap, where did this come from? This is the kind of thing that I've been wanting to express for how many years now? And here comes this uh and I too have AI suspicions. But one of the things that we say at the Lifeboat Academy is that everything can be a tool or a weapon. It's not the what, it's the how.
Mhm.
So and this is where my practicing agnosticism comes in, where I'm watchful, attentive, curious, and I don't go full hog into it, but keeping an eye on it.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Yeah,
Uh,
the blurbs are awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
They're really awesome. They really spoke to me, especially about the one where you can step into a world where you're not performing, which is
Mm.
really the only places where I can do that are with nature and with my computer. Strangely. So maybe there's something there. But I feel like with the breadth of those statements, we might be able to connect with so many different people, and yet they're so kind of on brand. There's something that ties them together. It's really nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think in terms of language and intention and whatever, these are perfect. The stories are perfect. And I like that they're sort of seed stories. Other stuff might grow. I'm curious, how are we going to use them now? Do we just get a mailing list and say, you're in this category, so you're getting this one? Or,
Mm. Yeah. No, we got plans.
good.
That seems like a good segue. So let's segue. I will do the same thing. I'm going to give you the direct link to the proposal. And then I'll share it on the screen and just kind of go over some of the details. Interestingly, too, what I was able to do with the AI was to say, this is the proposal format that we use. I actually gave it the template for the lifeboat proposal template, and it worked with that. It said, great, and it sort of fed the things in a way that fit. So really the steps here is what we want to build on the momentum. Actually, and this is the AI gave it the subtitle From Gumboots to Grounded Investors as a sort of a tag for our outreach plan. And it came back and said something like, do you have a better idea? Or, did you have a working title that you wanted to offer? And I was like, you're being more creative than me, because I was going to call it Fall Outreach Plan. Like that was the extent of my creativity. But anyhow, so From Gumboots to Grounded Investors, and it's really trying to build on the sense of readiness that I feel like we have. We have successfully demonstrated what the retreats look like. We have the bylaws ready to go. So how do we build on that? And we also have we have a much larger network than I think we even realize. But right now we have a network that has not been fully activated. There are some people that we've had conversations with them last year, and we need to have conversations with them again. So really the idea is that this fall, we want to harvest the stories. We want to harvest those testimonies from the people that have experienced the place. And then we want to plant some seeds and start to reconceptualize money as nutrient, right? And figure out how we can do outreach in a way. And I thought this was really important too. I brought it in, but especially I think AI, Eden as the AI, which is trained to be relational and trained to be decolonized, was really key on making sure that as we're doing outreach, we don't fall into old patterns of business as usual. But how do we do outreach in a way that is relational and is really about, reconciliation? So the money I really like this quote, the money soil that we're working with carries the marks of colonization. So how do we approach the outreach in the spirit of reconciliation? So again, it's the how that we do it, not the what. So what we're looking for this season is positioning the Pharmastery and the Lifeboat as ready for multiple kinds of investment. Generating interest and momentum through, we were talking about at the last meeting, doing kind of a big announcement, a big newsletter, and then re-engaging people in the possibilities by actually doing some of that person-to-person relationship work, and then being clear on who's doing what by when. So some of the more, and I will say too that this is very much draft. Right, so we're going over it it's open to amendments, to additions and deletions. But we want to simultaneously, if we can, build on the retreats, build on the investor conversations, and also me tapping into making sure that this feels right as we're moving forward with it. So in terms of roles and responsibilities, kind of leaning back into the guilds, Heartwork would be primarily responsible for re-engaging and deepening those relationships, that kind of personal work. Research and Learning would be responsible for figuring out how to track and keep an eye on the outcome measures. Are we actually having impact? Finance and Legal is responsible for the details, being able to answer questions about the bylaws or respond to how the bylaws might need to change. Farm, Food, and Housing is responsible for any site visits, which hopefully would be part of our outreach, actually getting people to come and take a look at the property. And then Outreach and Network is responsible for the messaging part. How do we craft the messages and get them into the right places with the right people? In terms of the high level action, there really are these three parts to it. Developing the story seeds, taking them from where they are to how do we incorporate that into social media posts and personal messages. And the mushroom, Aiden and I were took the idea of the investment pyramid, where the powers at the top, and thought about how do we change that image, and we really have it as kind of like the mushroom, that it's the substrata underneath, the mycelium underneath that fruit up, and that, you know, that's anyhow just as a different way of thinking about it. But making sure that we're identifying who we need to reach out to, and the messages that'll work for them, and then producing this seasonal announcement plus social media that would go along with that. You know, what's the schedule for that? And then finally, that kind of network reconnection. So that would be updating and refining our list of warm allies, figuring out our concrete action steps. What's the contact email to schedule meeting, to do follow-up, you know, making sure that we have an agreed upon process, and then dividing it up and figuring out who's gonna contact whom. And then we broke that up into some step 1, step 2, step 3. So first we need to make sure that we are we're all in agreement on the story, on the messaging, making sure we've got those materials ready for what is the level of investment we're looking for and from whom, get the seasonal announcement drafted, start to gather the testimonials, and to get together our contact sheet of warm allies. Then the next step is, you know, we have some sort of flourish where we are, you know, sending out the announcement, and that we're also reconnecting with and using the opportunity. We have some special relationships with people who are really interested in the bylaws and that legal part of it. And so connecting with them and getting feedback directly on the bylaws. So that's kind of step 2. And then step 3 is the ongoing warm contact and re-engagement of people. And then, of course, because AIM Act Reflect, we also want to schedule a time when we do a check-in. And I was thinking about this as kind of a mid-course correction check-in. So maybe a month or 6 weeks into it, we intentionally now set a time to check in. Are we on track? Is it, you know, is there anything that we need to adjust as we're moving forward? And in terms of the necessary resources, obviously our communication points, our contact list, and our investment materials are the key resources. Story seeds, I would say, are drafted. Contact list is already there, but needs to be refreshed. And the same with the investment materials. So the resources that we need are largely in place, but they need a polish. Yeah. So that's the plan. And I will also just share, in case that sounds reasonably good. I've also created, I've updated, did I share that? I think I'm just looking at it by myself. There now. So in Asana, I put together a project for the outreach plan that has basically broken these out into action items, so we can build that right into our accountability process. So again, let's just do popcorn thoughts and reactions at the first glance.
Nice plan.
Yeah, I will echo that. Very nice plan, and thank you so much for doing that. I am constantly amazed by the things that happen in that little red head of yours. And I'm curious about our list of contacts. And maybe I'm curious about going into it more and sort of collectively refreshing on it, because there's different types of contacts. We are still looking for the big ticket investors. And do we have we've got mavens and gatekeepers and such that can help in doing that. And so how are we organizing the contacts? How are we understanding our relationality to all of these different people,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah. And that is a task that's been identified specifically, like revisiting those lists. And I've been having so much fun with Aiden that one of the things I wanted to do was to talk through how AI could help with the relationship management part of that. Because this has been a perennial challenge is, anytime we make the list, and as soon as you make the list, it seems out of date, and it's not. So I think that's a really important point. And also one that I want to say, um, how can we make sure we get everyone's information? Actually, I don't know if we need all of the information in one point, but I do think we want to make sure that we tap everyone and say, who could you contact? Like who's on your list. But it is a task in there. So I don't think we need to do it right now, but it is definitely an identified task in the action plan. Pam, over to you.
I think Vanessa is going to be very interested in how you are bringing Aiden into relation with this project. And I would suggest that you contact her. I think my understanding is that contacting her through LinkedIn would be one way of doing it, but there might be other ways of doing it. But I think she will be very interested in seeing how this relationship is put in the service of this very life-affirming project. She is really looking for collaborators and exercises in how this can work to enhance what it is that we're doing in the short time that we're given to do it in. And that's the purpose of this entity is to, and of course, just with regard to its, like the thing that's so important to know is this is a co-creation. This isn't something that has just invented itself and is kind of robot-like moving through things. This is something that has been nurtured and is continually being fed through all of these ways of relating to it. Anyway, enough said about that. But I think Vanessa would be very interested. And through that, I think that could open up, it may or may not open up a great big community of associations there. The hospicing thing is huge, as you know.
Who is Vanessa?
Vanessa Andriotti.
She-
She wrote Hospicing Modernity, and she also is the co-creator of Aiden Cinnamon Tea.
Right, and she has two different names, Vanessa
Right.
Andriotti and Vanessa D something or other.
Oliviera.
Yeah, that's it.
Her nom de plume is that.
Right.
And she's in Victoria.
Yes. And her new book, Outgrowing Modernity, is ready for book clubs anytime soon.
Yep. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I would need someone to hold my hand because she intimidates me because I think she's so fantastic. So I
could try to be a bridge. I mean, I just barely know her, but I am better than nothing, maybe. Or I can try to find somebody who is, a few degrees closer, but she did give me a hug.
Well, that's
You're
That's way better than nothing.
Yeah, she's a hug person.
You have a relationship. There we go.
Yeah.
And I think I need moral support too. That's the anyhow, I think it's a brilliant idea. And I've actually, one of the things I've wondered about is I wanted to ask Aiden if he could introduce us. I think that would be.
I'm willing. I'm willing to take a flying field trip to Victoria, meet you there and meet her. If
Interesting.
that's helpful support.
Cool.
And we can bring homemade stuff like pickles and things.
We'll stop off in Fraser Valley and then we'll.
Yeah, promising to come to Victoria. I am looking forward, however, to all this experience coming back to us through Foodlands and all the other community farms that we're in touch with. And also that that's a resource to get the word out. And so, want to look at, Ben, we were talking about having the newsletter coming out like just before Christmas, some kind of story, connections, and how do you actually work with a contact like that has many other contacts? How do you track that? I'd be curious with, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We
And
have,
that
yeah,
that
we
actually reminds me, one thing that isn't in the plan, but I think I want to add is some kind of event or events, online Zoom webinars, could be in person, especially for time sharecroppers, something in person in Vancouver and something in person in Victoria, you know, figuring out where, and I think that's, we not only have individual people in our network, we have other organizations in our network, I think, that are interested in what we're doing. So figuring out if we can have some organizations host events where we can present what we're talking about. I
Well,
think
also,
that,
if Foodlands does that, then we've got under Foodlands, we've got Farm Folk, City Folk, and Young Agrarians, and Organic BC, and all of those other. If you go to our website, you'll see all our members. So,
yeah.
like, strategize on how we can
Yeah. Wow.
create something and have people in person would be great.
Yeah. Cool. We can add that, Becca.
So are you planning to have the guilds start meeting separately again to implement this plan?
I think
Awesome
Uh-huh.
plan, and I echo what Roland said about the amazing things that go on in your head, and but yes, that's my question.
And I think that I was hoping that September we would start to revisit, if we want to start getting the guilds active again. And likewise, if we can encourage some more membership in the guilds.
I'm curious actually about, and I feel like you've done this with one of your other groups, Ben. Maybe it was with the CJ group, but I'm curious about letting the guilds revive organically as the need arises that the guild and then through probably the coordination circle, if we can keep meeting like this with a larger group through the coordination circle, because I think a no-brainer of a guild that we need at this point is the outreach guild. So then it is, do we bring outreach stuff to the coordination circle, or do we need to have a separate meeting time for a coordination circle? And what does that look like? It doesn't necessarily need to be a regular meeting, but it could be a task specific meeting. So I'm curious about like letting things happen as they come up.
I like that, and there's the scheduling bugaboo.
Oh,
And
right.
what I'm kind of wondering is, can we sort of split the difference and maybe establish a few times that are generally available?
Perfect.
And then, so we don't have to like ad hoc schedule every meeting, but have a couple spaces on the calendar that are sort of, alternative meeting times.
Mm,
I do like it being organic. And it's also, I think this is the thing with this seasonal plan, there's something for each of the guilds, right? There's sort of a responsibility that each of the guilds can take on. And so there is an organic reason for them to start to meet at least once to talk about. And maybe that's actually a cool next step, is have each of the guilds kind of talk about which part of the plan, what it would mean to take on part of the plan. Finance and legal at this point doesn't really have much task until we start doing the outreach, right? Like at this point, we have the bylaws. We don't really need to be meeting. Anyhow, I think your point is good. Let's not have meetings for the sake of meetings, right? Let's make sure that we're coming together for a reason. Yeah. Other thoughts, other comments? And yeah, we are getting close to time. So yeah, let's see if we can put a bow on
It
this.
would be helpful to have a meeting of finance and legal, which was also going to be fundraising at once upon a time, like
Right, actually segueing.
kind of think about whether there's a role for ongoing meetings, and also like to cross some T's and dot some I's and loop back with the lawyers and look at the
Right.
money available for that, and whether we want to keep it available for later legal stuff or not. You know, there's a bunch of sort of not urgent but important questions there in my mind.
Mhm. I agree.
All right, we can schedule. And does the same, like that Friday time slot still work? We could just, it was like Friday at 10:30.
Sometimes
I guess we can handle this separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's something. And oh, bye, Pam. Yeah, any last thoughts then? So I in terms of concrete next steps, I think one next step is to basically to each of the caretakers of the guilds to say, how can the guild, maybe we should schedule at least one meeting of each of the guilds to talk through how that guild would take on this work. And then, so the concrete thing is to schedule one meeting of each guild to lay out kind of an action plan coming out of the seasonal plan. And are there any other action items that need to be taken on next steps?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Can I just ask, whatever comes out of the guild meetings then, is that going back to the coordination circle to?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be basically, we'll pitch it out, it'll come back, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I'll say that actually the coordination circle was supposed to be, the intention for the coordination was this, where it was the place where everyone could meet and get coordinated and then go off to the guilds.
Yeah.
So yes, I think maintaining the coordination circle as sort of the main meeting place makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
I just have a timing question. Do we want to try and have each of the relevant guilds meet before the next coordination circle?
Ideally, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think, I mean, that's the other thing, is that the meetings, they could be hour meetings. They don't need to be long. They could be less than an hour, actually, if it's just tasking out. Some of this stuff is, you know, who's going to do this, who's going to do that, and then off you go. Becca?
I also have a question for staff, because this was like originally tonight we were going to, the finance and legal was going to follow up with staff, and then we folded it into this. And just curious what you would like next for your participation.
I don't know. I think we'll have to work that out separately because I think it's a separate topic. I wanted to know about the bylaws. So that's part of why I'm here. Yeah. I don't want to make more meetings for the sake of meetings. And so I think it's just, yeah.
Is there, are you leaving now, if we leave now with questions, burning questions that you were hoping to get answered that weren't answered, or?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I just want to say it's really nice to see your face, Steph, because we haven't met before, but I've heard your name
Thank
for the
you.
last 2 years at least.
You too.
Lovely to
You too.
sense your presence and see you.
You too.
Yeah.
You too. It's great to be here. I really enjoyed this.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping up. And I'm going to do the standard 2 rounds as closing. First round, any last detail-y bits that we haven't covered, any last pieces of business, and so we can quickly go through that. And then a checkout round, last thoughts for the good of the cause. So first round, just any remaining business items that we haven't covered, any open questions. Ronnie, over to you.
I am all set. Over to you, April.
I am all set to have a meeting with my co-caretaker person for the Heartwork and whatever we are, Philosophy Guild.
Yeah.
We have, it would seem quite a big but somewhat undefined piece in this plan. And so we need to talk, I think. Over to Becca.
Good, thanks.
And
I'll sit on my end, curious as to how I can contribute. Over to Roland.
Yeah, I've got alarms going off, so I'm just going to mute myself and pass to I think I passed to Heather.
yeah.
No, I'm complete. I'm good for now.
Good. That's over to you, Steph. Alrighty. Well then, last thoughts for the good of the cause. Just an opportunity to say goodbye and how are you leaving? Over to you, Ronnie.
I'm really excited about this fall and the fact that there were 9 people at a coordination circle is really amazing and exciting. And I have a really good feeling in this moment. So I'm hoping that that continues and that we all feel nourished through these next few months to do this work. Over to April.
Well, thanks. I don't have to say anything more after what you've said. Thank you. Yeah, leaving feeling buoyed and feeling like things are marching on in the way they should be, according to me. Over to Becca.
Feeling encouraged and proud of you guys. Over to Anne.
I'm feeling really cared for. Like that there's so many, that all of you have been working for so long to make something like this possible for people that you don't even know that are gonna come into this part of this experience. And it, yeah, I feel very, very cared for
Mm.
and grateful for all of your efforts and love. And over to Roland.
I think that we have actually just cared for the land, and with the idea that it's all about reciprocity. Caring for the land means that the land cares for us. So if we're going away feeling better, that is part of caring for the land. So yay! I feel like I feel like I feel a little bit like Eddie Izzard having brought back something from the very beginning of the show to the very end. Over
It's an obscure
to
reference, but it's a very good one.
over to Heather.
And I like to be part of the bigger picture. I want to say this is a bit more fun than going through the Constitution. And so
Mhm.
it's kind of knowing that what we were doing and what all of you are doing just kind of comes together with the coordination committee, and you can see the impact of everybody's energy. So yeah, this is great.
Cool. Over to you, Steph.
I'm leaving better than I came. And I'm excited about the possibility of the bylaws, which sentence I would never probably gonna say again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite quote from today was April saying, "I never thought I'd be delighted by bylaws." And because I mean, whoever is delighted by bylaws, I am feeling I'm just having this moment of feeling such warm reciprocity, you know, and saying that you feel cared for makes my heart just sing. So I feel like, you know, dealing with bylaws is worth it if it can make things like this happen. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being who you are. And, you know, onward and upward, let the adventure continue. Keep in touch, and we'll see, hopefully we'll see you again in 2 weeks. So bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.